What's up, everyone? You are listening to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Matt Field, and I'll be your host for this week. I am joined by Neil Rivera. How are you doing, Neil?
What it do? I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. And the other Rivera brother, Wesley. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Just jamming. How we doing?
Doing well. All right. So this week we got a couple topics to talk about with you guys. First up, the big news story of the past few days is Bungie finally reintroduced their Marathon reboot. And they had a big showcase over the weekend and showed off a bunch of the gameplay and dropped a bunch of information about the game. And we've all, at this point, watched the showcase and probably read some impressions from journalists here. So let's talk about this. Neil, let's start off with you. What are your general feelings on how this showcase went?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it reminded me in a lot of ways of like the original Titanfall reveal. Where like it's essentially Bungie coming out and being like, hey, like allow us to introduce you to the extraction shooter as a genre, right? Like we're going to walk you through like not only the world that we've set up here, but like kind of how it functions, like kind of like you can see a little bit of like how they're injecting some of the Destiny DNA into it with like the 3 different classes, the 3 different archetypes. Obviously like the loot is going to be a big factor here. So I mean, but that was kind of like the general impression that I got, was that it was just very geared toward like, let's see if we can find a mainstream audience for like extraction shooters, and just see if we can convert some of the, like, it almost reminded me a lot of like, like it almost seemed like it was a pitch tailored towards like the Call of Duty Warzone players. I feel like there's a lot of shared DNA in like how those games sort of like look and feel.
Yeah, and to break it down for those who may not know here, the extraction shooter, I mean, it's kind of been a niche multiplayer genre for several years now. Escape from Tarkov is probably the most notable success story. It's also what the original Division had for its Dark Zone mode.
That's right.
Basically, you're dropped into an arena style, or a map, a zone, with either teams or individuals, where there are both other players that you're competing against, and as well as AI for you to fight against, with the objective generally being to collect what you can, sort of Fortnite style, and then extract out with those with that gear here. So, Wesley, what did you think about this?
I do want to kind of, ride on what Neil was just saying regarding the fact that I love the fact that they were explaining what it is, because you guys were saying, like, yeah, it is kind of a niche market for extraction shooters. So by Bungie just kind of showcasing the concept of it to this wide audience, hopefully they'll get a lot more people who maybe weren't interested in the extraction shooter, get them into it. I really liked just how well the dialogue regarding the game went. You could tell that a lot of the developers were personally like invested in it more than just a 9-to-5 type, gig that they're doing. So it made me very hopeful for it.
Yeah, especially given the fact that this was recorded live on a Saturday. I think it was live. I'm not sure if it was live. I think it was. But the studio audience was all Bungie employees who had come in, presumably on a weekend to launch this game, which shows you the dedication at play there. And to what you're speaking about with the fact that this was delivered kind of in the style, of really what's the recent example that comes to mind is the Diablo 4. Fireside chats where they talk about in a sort of, informal manner changes. They're honest about what's going well, what's not going well. So I think this is and I don't follow Destiny that closely, so I'm not sure if they've done something similar there.
I mean, yeah, I can speak to some of this, and like, and I can't maybe not speak to like some of the recent. I know that there's been a lot of turnover and layoffs and stuff like that, but historically they've been very communicative and like really like open with the community, and like leaning on members of the community, content creators, of course. So I mean, as for the actual that was always more geared toward like balance and stuff like that. I can't really speak to a lot of like the monetary decisions, because it seems like that's kind of like fluctuated over the years, and I think that kind of is like a good segue into like my like concern about this is that like is because like as much as Destiny is a game like that I enjoy playing, like it is arguably one of the best playing shooters of its generation, like of its ilk. It's not like it wasn't like a service game that like really captured me and like really had me hooked in it, and like I still feel that like I wasn't crazy. Like it seems like the world building they're doing just seems like really superficial, and like I don't know, I didn't really seem to buy this like from a narrative standpoint, which is also like one of Bungie's like big selling points. So yeah, I'm interested to see like, I mean, Matthew, like what did you think? Where did you come away from this from a narrative standpoint?
Yeah, I agree with you here. I think Destiny has generally my broad thought on Marathon in general is I think there is a reason why the extraction shooter has remained a niche genre, and it has nothing to do with the fact that there's no like AAA studio that's making them. I think it's actually indicative that no other AAA studio has taken this genre on in the way that Bungie is now, because it's a punishing genre. I mean, we're talking about like if you have your gear that you have been gearing up with and you drop into this game like a match, which I think they said are like 25 minutes long, which side note, I think is actually a really perfect length of match for this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if you die and that's it, you lost your gear, right? And they said that the expected survival rate for each match is below 50%.
Yeah.
So you were expected to die in more than 50% of the matches that you're dropping into and like losing your gear. And that is going to be like, I think this showcase what it didn't do is it did not showcase, pun not intended, the agony and just how hyper competitive this kind of game is going to be. It's not going to be Destiny where you have like, at least they didn't showcase this, but there's not going to be like a zone where you're just chilling and hanging out and you can like emote at your friends, which I think is actually why a lot of people stay with Destiny, like just the social aspect of it. And this doesn't seem to have elements of that.
They pitched it more as like, you and your buddies are going to drop in and like you guys are going to like, and like they did kind of push a persistence to it. So I mean, I'll be interested. There's obviously there's got to be a balance that they find there. I don't think that there. I mean, and obviously like I feel like you know more about it than I do, but like there has to be a line between like this is too punishing and like we are actively like you're losing your gear, but like maybe there's some permanent upgrades, things like that. I don't know.
I don't think there's permanent gear. I think anything that is gear based is you lose it. And some of the stuff is going to be, but that also so
they mentioned like being able to spec your character and like being able to like
so my understanding is like the characters that you pick have their abilities and their traits, but you can get like modifiers through gaining reputation and completing contracts for the major factions, which those do persist. I think they did specifically say that you could still level up contracts even if you die during a mission.
And they did say that like
so there is a level of.
You go, Wes.
Yeah, so I was saying, so there definitely is some level or some modicum of like permanent enhancements to your career, if you will.
There is, but again, this is going to be using a seasonal model, which is common these days, and then like those upgrades, everything clears at the end of the season, essentially. Okay. So it's still rather impermanent, So yeah, I don't know. I don't think what I could see happening here is I could see a lot of Destiny fans kind of taking this, buying this game and being disappointed with what they get. I think there may be a backlash from some of the more casual Destiny players who are hoping for an experience like that here. Again, unless there is some other aspect that they didn't share here, I could see that they're this may not be received by the entire Bungie fan base. Go ahead, Wes.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Just Bungie does have a history of maybe having some not so successful launches, i.e. Destiny 1, and then over the span of the game just sort of really turning it around, So I mean, that could initially be like, maybe we have that disappointing launch because, most of these Destiny veterans are coming into the extraction shooter type, new, and then, of course, they're, like a backlash. But, maybe they expand on that and Marathon becomes, like a yearly contender for, for players.
Counterpoint. Yeah. This also gets into another point that we haven't brought up is the fact that they're charging $40 for this thing, right? Or they're charging you out like up front for it.
Well, and so that's the other angle here is they did say this is going to be a premium title. They did not share pricing. Maybe they haven't determined it yet or whatever, but.
And there's enough recent history to suggest that, like, a game like Battlefield, 2073, a game like Concord that just came out last year, where, like, if you are charging upfront for a multiplayer experience, like, people are less likely these days to pay upfront for it when you have, like, the Fortnites and the Apex Legends and the Warzones and, like, all these free options out there. So, they're really going to have to sell people on, like, the genre, but then also the fact that, like, you're getting a Bungie, like, you're going to get a Bungie experience that we're going to support. I think there's an added layer of, like, wary here with the whole Concord thing that happened last year.
Right, because you're not only talking about Concord coming out of the gate as a premium multiplayer title and failing immediately. You've also got the fact that Destiny is now essentially free to play. We just have to buy the expansions, and the other success story for premium multiplayer titles of the last decade or whatever, Overwatch, is now in the same boat. So everybody has moved away from this model, including Bungie themselves. And the one recent attempt to do this. At a big scale with Concord, failed completely. Now, I don't think that will be the fate here of Marathon. I think they will find an audience.
You at least have, like, the pedigree of Bungie here, like to at least drive the interest and, like, you're going to at least get a percentage of Destiny players who are, like, going to kick the tires on this thing. So it won't be dead after a week.
Yes. Yeah, there's the built-in Bungie fan base, which I think you can't underestimate that. And so the other thing here is this going to attract players away from other live service games that players are already entrenched into?
I thought about that a good bit, because it did remind me a lot of Warzone. So that's a good. I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to come down to the service element of it. And whether or not even like, because that's the thing is, like, if the game's going to be punishing, like, if it's going to be hard, that's fine. But, like, there has to be a hook that keeps me back, coming back. And, okay, one more game, and, like, maybe it's just the emergent gameplay moments with my friends, or maybe, it's just not that kind of, maybe it's just not the kind of game for me right now. Maybe it is a hyper competitive thing. So I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I will note that that was the one thing that I failed to really feel when I was watching the showcase. I'm always looking for what's the thing that's gonna, like you were saying, the hook. I call it like my this game has this. All right, I'm in. And I didn't really experience it that much with this. I'd still like to dive into it at some point, but I do hope they showcase some more stuff as we get closer to the release that I can finally be like, now I get it.
It feels very much like, hey, we're Bungie and we're making an extraction shooter. Like there is no twist on the, like even like, when Overwatch came out, like there had been hero-based shooters, certainly, or I think it came out around the same time as Battleborn, and like, it won based on like it doing things better, right? Like, so it's like, if it's just, a decent version of the same thing that we already have, like I don't think it's going to pull the Tarkov players, and I don't think it's going to pull the Destiny players. So yeah, I mean, to your point, Wes, I think it does need some sort of hook or something like that to keep the casuals like me interested.
Yeah, and Neil, to backtrack slightly to your point about, what is this offering if you're going to lose everything? There was an interview with Joe Ziegler, who's the game director, which I think is worth noting. And a quick digression here: Joe Ziegler was the game director for Valorant when it launched. So that's the kind of pedigree that he's bringing here, and I think you can kind of see some of his touches with the way they are doing the classes and their abilities and making each of the characters feel unique. I think you can. He's got some of his fingerprints on that, it seemed to me. But in an interview with him, it says, this is a PC Gamer headline here saying, Bungie says Marathon is about losing all your gear, but still having a great time because you, quote, come out with a good story. And I think that right there kind of distills the whole experience. It's whether it can generate those good, like, emergent gameplay moments where you're like, oh, like I was like, I was solo, like my teammates had gone down, and then I like stole this, this loot that the other team was trying to extract with, and I got out of there with like a big score or whatever. Like, it's those kind of moments, and whether they can deliver that is something that
I would love to see how, like, I mean, when you describe it that way, I would love to see how, they mentioned that the survival rate is less than 50%. I would love to see how, like, that compares to, Fortnite getting a top 10 finish, in a match that isn't dominated by bots. Like, how does that compare to, like, the average battle royale experience? Because I feel like if you can get it in the same ballpark, I think there's a chance that you could have something there. Because, like, I think back to, like, when PUBG first came out, and, like, those were some of my, like, favorite gaming experiences. Were just like, oh my god, I got ran over by this car and I was like top 10, and I was like, I thought I had it in the bag. So yeah, I mean, like, I think if there are these, like, oh man, we died, but like we died in hilarious or fun ways, then I think it'll offset it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also think, coming, with like the Valorant pedigree, and like I think Bungie itself kind of has this pedigree at this point for like everything super precise and like finely tuned. I think ultimately it's just going to appeal to like a hardcore audience that really invests the time and gets good at it. And I don't think it's, I mean, Destiny, you had the same issues where it's like, I think you're going to see the same sort of like barriers to entry, and instead of like the world building, it'll be the game difficulty here. But we'll see. Like, I'm interested to be, I'm excited to be proved wrong on that front. I definitely want to give it a try. I hope they do some sort of open beta.
Yeah, they have the closed alpha that starts in, I think next week is when it starts. And then I'm sure they're going to be ramping that up into betas over the summer ahead of the launch in September. Also, I just want to say one thing we have somehow avoided mentioning at all here is that the aesthetic in this game looks fantastic. I don't like it, this is like a
very cyberpunk.
Yeah, it's like a cyberpunk mixed with a Halo and like with Destiny. It just feels like something very much of its own. It's like a colorful high sci-fi with like a punk aspect. I actually even hesitate to call it cyberpunk because it's it doesn't
It's
have
more
like
high
the
future.
sort
It's really futuristic looking. And yeah, I think that's kind of part of where my initial hesitation or like apprehension came from with like the story and narrative. Like it seemed very like, generic for like how dope the art looks. Because I mean, Destiny, like for as much as we like to nitpick Bungie and like how they tell that story and like kind of how convoluted it's gotten over the years, like they had a committed fan base who were like every expansion like waiting to see, and like I commend them for that. But like I got the sense from this that like I'm not going to be interested in this story at all. So we'll see.
Well, it's really interesting because this is based on a 1994, 1996 shooter. Yeah. So I feel like they might have had a little bit of difficulty taking something that might have been... And sorry, I haven't played the original Marathon, guys. But taking this 90s shooter narrative and somehow making it, this is 2025 now, so part of them was like, let's keep true to this world, but I'm sure they were also like, let's do our own twist on it. So I think that could have been where the lack of narrative energy may be coming from.
And that's a good point that you bring up, that it came out in 94, it's essentially a reboot of that game. So yeah, that's a good point, a good call out, because I did not consider that at all.
Yeah, and I think that like what they can do here is that gives them a well of things to like trickle out. I mean, they even announced this release date, or this gameplay showcase date, with like an ARG that they kind of like, players had to figure out online. I think the Destiny style theorizing that people like to do about the tiniest little morsels of like, this one text log mentions this like, character that was mentioned somewhere else. I think the fact that they are pulling from this game, which I haven't played the original Marathon games either, but as I understand it, it was basically just you're shooting dudes and you're reading a bunch of text entries. That's the extent of the story there. It gives them a lot of stuff to pull from, and also, they've mentioned that the big overarching story here is what happened to this colony, how they disappear. Which is not. It on its surface is not as compelling as something like Destiny, where you're like, how did the traveler get here, and what's going on Earth?
It's very I was gonna say it's very grounded compared to the Destiny story, despite it still being like a futuristic sci-fi set.
Yes.
Like it was very like, you're a runner, and like like it's very it's very grounded in like capitalism, and and that's cool. Like I'm all for but like I've always associated Bungie with just like high sci-fi, like like big fantasy. So it'll be interesting to see them take that on, and if how they can. I mean, and who knows? Like I will give Bungie credit. Like they can write good set pieces. They can write like the cutscenes. Their cutscenes are always great. So I mean, I think that kind of a story lends itself well to like a more action packed and some good. Like I feel like you can craft some good cinematics around that. So I think I'm all for it. But yeah, that was one thing that I noticed is a departure from like what at least modern Bungie is known for.
Yeah, and they did say there may be some things like raid-esque type encounters. I don't know. They were pretty vague from what I understand about anything they didn't explicitly show in the footage that was there. But I think that there's certainly a lot of promise here. The fact that it's just a new thing from Bungie makes it notable. So let's get into like some light predictions here. How do you guys see this launch going? This is a primarily a competitive game where you've got to think about balance and such, which hasn't really been the main feature of Destiny, and wasn't something they had to consider back when they were making Halo. So how do we feel that Bungie is going to handle the balancing game here?
I mean, I think it's going to come down to communication. So I mean, I don't I don't know what the state of their like community management and all of that is, but like make sure you have a community manager, make sure you have, you know, several people that can handle, you know, like I think the feedback is going to be important, that, you know, in establishing that loop. I don't know, man. I think the, you know, whatever the price tag ends up being, you know, you really like there's some calculus that you have that goes into it now at this point is, you know, if you're charging something at the entry point, like how likely are those people going to be to stick around and then buy a battle pass and then buy skins, or, you know, is it better? So I don't know. I mean, I do think, you know, I don't think this goes the way of Concord. I do think this comes out, it has a moderate level of success. You know, the fact that we didn't touch on this either, the fact that it's multi-platform certainly helps. So yeah, exactly. I mean, yes. I think it comes out and it does fine. I don't think it's going to light the world on fire. I do think it ultimately it's going to fall into like that Apex, and, you know, not to say that those games aren't successful, but like it's, you know, I think it's going to have its ebbs and flows, and it's going to be around, but it's not going to be like a huge, like, it's not going to be like an earth-shattering. Like, I don't think everyone's going to be making extraction shooters after this comes out.
Yeah, I think this will probably be pretty popular with, you know, watching people on Twitch or whatever, and I think it's going to have. I think Apex is a perfect comparison here, not just because of the 3-man squad setup, but yeah, I think, you know, Apex had a pretty big launch because it launched out of nowhere.
Yeah,
and you know, it's fallen off some, but sustained that growth. I think, but again, that's free to play. You know, when you're charging that money up front, as everybody who remembers Cyberpunk 2077's launch knows, you can't have a garbage experience on day one. You've got to have it refined and tuned in some capacity. And while it is not something that you know, Bungie has historically had to worry about a lot, I think they're approaching it right. They're getting the alpha launched, you know, 5 months ahead of time so they can start tweaking things based on feedback. So they seem to have the right attitude about it. You know,
the Destiny games historically, like, I mean, even like Destiny 1, Destiny 2, like the vanilla launches, like those went pretty smoothly as far as I recall.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it as well. I mean, obviously the expansions have been pretty smooth. Yeah, it's been too long. Maybe there was a rocky launch with Destiny 1 that I'm forgetting here. But again, that's primarily a PvE game. You know, you're not having to worry about like major latency or lag in the middle of you know, while you're getting gunned down in the middle of and losing all your loot type thing. But yeah, so I guess we can wrap this up with round this out with some thoughts on whether if this was launching tomorrow, if you don't get to see anything more than what you have seen in this showcase, and we'll say for the purposes of this, you know, conversation, the game costs $40. Are you getting this game at launch?
I can't say that I would get it at launch with what I've seen. Like Neil was saying earlier, I think it's really important that we take a look at like how the alpha does. It's good that they're doing it ahead of time so they can tweak it. I think the reason we're seeing this game do a multi-platform launch is because Sony is trying to avoid the disaster of Concord's release. I think having it accessible to more players is gonna, you know, really give them a good shot at getting some nice numbers on release. But for me personally, I got to see a little more before I dip my toes in.
Understandable. What about you, Neil?
Are you ready for my bold prediction that I just came up with?
Yeah, let's hear it.
This is obviously like totally grounded in fiction, like may or may not happen. But I mean, I do think Sony is nervous. If I were Sony, if I were PlayStation, I'd be nervous enough to where, like, if it doesn't, like, if the alpha comes out and it's like a tepid response, they may do like a throw it on PlayStation Plus, and like you get it, you know, do like a day and date launch with PlayStation Plus. But that being said, all that to say that if to answer your previous question, no, I don't think I would drop 40 or what would most most realistically in the era of $80 Mario Kart, this game's probably going to be $50 at launch. I probably won't. It's probably like a wait for the free to play version to drop. Just given how brutal, if they come out and hey, this is really making it accessible, it doesn't seem like that's the route they're going. They're really trying to appeal to and really make the case that extraction shooters are dope, so you should play them. And I am all for you guys doing that, but it is not for me.
Yeah,
I think at least at charging $50 or whatever it may be.
Right, it's a totally different proposition. Whether you just download something and try it out for an hour or two to see if it's for you, versus paying that money up front. Before you can play it. I think for me, I probably will end up buying this, regardless of anything else. I'm a big Valorant player. I still play Valorant pretty consistently, and Joe Ziegler, he's going to get me here. I think I like where he's going with this, and Bungie's a talented team, and I
think if anyone can make the extraction shooter work, it's them. You know what I'm saying? I think if there was going to be a team that has a breakout success with this genre, it will be them. So I'm rooting for them for sure.
Yeah, I agree that this is probably it. This is if this doesn't break out, the extraction shooter genre is not going to get another AAA launch like this. So I think you could pretty much guarantee that, at least without some heavy modifications to tweaks to the gameplay or twists to make it different and new,
more palatable
to a wider audience. Exactly. Yeah. Or just something new, just intriguing to kind of catch people's eye. But thankfully we won't have to wait too long. This is coming out September 23rd, and I'm sure there will be a pretty consistent trickle of new information and betas and all that headed up to then. So for right now, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to have some game impressions for you. We are back. Let's jump right into it. The first game that we're going to talk about today is South of Midnight, a new game from Compulsion, launched on Game Pass a couple weeks ago, and Wesley and Neil have been playing this. So Wesley, let's jump in. What are your thoughts on the game so far?
Well, I'm really liking it so far. I'll admit I'm only about 4 or 5 hours into it, so I've cleared the tutorial and I've enjoyed a little bit of getting through this story. I like how the combats felt so far. It basic hack and slash with a couple of dodge mechanics, pretty simple, but it seems to be really satisfying for me so far. But mind you, tutorial, it always makes the gameplay seem more fun. I really like the Southern folklore behind it. I mean, we all live in the South, so seeing things like the bottles hanging from trees and haints and things, reading up on some of the creatures that I'm gonna encounter, it just seems really cool for me. And I do like the narrative direction that it's taken, so I'm hoping that it kind of keeps that level of intrigue and mystery. Lots of questions are going to have to be answered, so excited for all of that.
Yeah, it's certainly the southern setting is very unique. As you mentioned, we're all here from the South. There's not too many games that are set in the South. And yeah, the story here, as I understand it, is definitely one of the main draws, and the art style is pretty unique as well. So Neil, I think you're a bit further in. How are you finding it?
Yeah. So I mean, I I think I just finished chapter 10. I either just finished chapter 10 or I just started chapter 10. Which is more or less, I looked it up, there's 14 chapters, so I'm pretty close to the end. And yeah, I mean, I guess to piggyback off of Wesley's most recent point, that yeah, I mean, like, the standout here is very much like the setting, the art, the music, like all of it is 10 out of 10. I mean, think, you know, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, that sort of like choppy frame rate animation, but like just this beautiful Southern Gothic aesthetic. I mean, yeah, like, I mean, the standout definitely is like the setting, but also the writing. I mean, I think they you know, like, I don't know much about like the folklore and like the different stories that go into it, but I think they do a good job of grounding these stories in real life scenarios. And, you know, granted, I don't know, you know, how you know how it translates, you know, but it seems like they're telling original stories with, you know, like these like folk tales, like, sort of incorporated.
Definitely.
And so I mean, you know, like, you're playing as you know, Hazel Flood is the main character's name, and, you know, you essentially, you know, find out that, you know, you can commune with the spirit world, and, you know, you can see like the you know, other people's trauma essentially is what you can like sort of experience and use that. It's kind of similar to Psychonauts in that, like, you know, where you're jumping into people's brain and like diagnosing their mental illnesses. You're like doing the same with people's trauma and like understanding, you know, how some of these creatures came to be in this world. So yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, like, I know Wesley called out the gameplay here. I actually think the combat itself, like, on a base level, it's kind of bland. Like, I think it's just kind of, you know, very like sort of mindless hack and slash. I do think they compensate and like make up for it with they add or like layer some complexity in with the different abilities and the different items that you get. Eventually, you know, like, one of them, Crouton, who's like your like little side companion, he's like a little cute little sock puppet. You can like throw him at enemies, and like they can, you know, he can take over enemies for a short amount of time and like attack and like help you out. You know, there's some AoE attack that you get. So I mean, like, they do add to your arsenal to make it more interesting, but it does take a while. I would say at least, you know, halfway through the game before like you're starting to get to combat encounters that really force you to like use your you know, abilities and stuff like that. That, you know, but the counter to that is I do think they have something with the like the platforming and like the mobility in the world. Some of the abilities you've got, you know, like you have a double jump, you have a float. You know, for those of you who haven't like seen or like heard much about this game, it's very PS2 coded. Like, just think like your average character action platformer, and it plays shockingly similar to that, where it's like, you know, you're double jumping, you're looking behind, you know, different pieces of the environment to find, you know, hidden secrets and things like that. There's not much to it. It's not like super complex. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those where like the gameplay is not going to knock your socks off, but it more than makes up for it with the storytelling, both, you know, like in the cutscenes, but also like in the environment. There's a lot of like, this is a game that I'm not one for like picking up and reading every note, but this is one that, you know, because of how well they tie it back to the characters and the story, you know, I've picked up and read through every note that I've found. Yeah, I mean,
wow.
I think, yeah, I guess like the one last critique that I have, like, you know, in regards to the writing is that like I do wish that we spent more time with each of these characters. Like, you can tell like they really give, you know, a lot to make you like relate to some of these characters on a personal level, but they are like in and out, like in one episode, you know, one chapter and then out the next. Like, there's very few characters that, at least so far in the game, have made a return.
Yeah.
So, you know, and like, I think that speaks to like just the scope of the game. Like, you can tell they were working on a tight budget, but I think there's a blueprint here for Xbox and Game Pass to like, okay, cool. Like, I think this is a perfect sized game for we're testing out a new IP from a developer like Compulsion, who We Happy Few, like it kind of was a thing of like style over substance. So, like to be able to put this game out and like it be sort of like a AA mid-range title, and if it does find success, then you can justify investing more in the sequel. So I think there's something here. I hope people play it. I think it's a really well-made game, and I would love to see what Compulsion does with the sequel and more budget.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you see is what you get. It sounds like the trailers and the pre-release material they've shared is pretty spot on with what you're getting. A rich narrative game with heavy Southern influences.
The story and the characters are, and I mean, like the whole vibe and aesthetic is like, if you're not into it, like you are not, like that is the 100% the selling point of the game. So like, the game, like if you're looking for like any sort of like interesting narrative or gameplay mechanics, it's it's a very boilerplate standard game that's carried by like a really unique sense of style.
And that's it's interesting because if you describe the sentence you just said, it's a unique visual style and story, but not a whole lot on the gameplay perspective. You could also basically be describing their last game, We Happy Few, which I believe you at least dabbled in, didn't you?
Yeah, and so what I would say is We Happy Few felt like a complete genre mismatch of like it didn't need to be a survival game. Like there didn't need to be survival elements, and it came out at a time where like everyone was trying to shoehorn that stuff in. I feel like it just needed to be like a Fallout or even a BioShock clone. Whereas this, I think, it at least is getting the genre right. It's just not as ambitious as, like when I say it's a PS2 coded game, like it probably plays as well as most PS2 games, like it's like you got a double jump, like the camera's responsive, like the combat is kind of floaty, kind of janky, but like, by the time, like, I'm finding the fun in it, but it does take a while for you to find the fun in it. There's like, it's very much like a 7 out of 10, right? Like there's some definitive big drawbacks here, but there's a lot of charm and like stuff that it's doing well that like I think it deserves a sequel for sure.
I mean, you're talking about like the gameplay being the weaker aspect here. I mean, how much, when you're saying the gameplay is it the platforming that's is that a drawback too, or is that got some interesting ideas, or is it really just the combat that's not?
It's mostly the combat and like the level design. It is mostly like you're repeating the same patterns over and over again. Like you're going and you're finding the spirits and like escaping from the bottle tree, and like consistently where I find myself having the most fun is in the more complex combat encounters, which I'm starting to get into now in like the later stage of the game, and also the Wesley, I don't know if you remember, like where you're escaping from the bottle tree and like you have to, it essentially turns into like an endless runner and you have to like outrun the like those sequences, especially as you gain more of like the mobility, like you get a wall run, you get a like you can like ride through like wind currents and things like that. Like those sequences are like super interesting to me. Like they almost remind me of like the wall running and moving around in like the Star Wars Jedi games. So like I
was going to say Prince of Persia even, like because you were talking about the PS2 coded.
Exactly, 100%. Like that's a perfect comparison there. So like I think there's fun to be found there, right? Like, and I mean, and similarly, I mean, if we're sticking with that comparison, like the combat is completely serviceable. Like it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Like there's just definitely a layer of like this could have used 6 months to like really polish some of this stuff. Like I feel like the health system is completely like just not like it felt like an afterthought where like I feel like maybe they could have adopted something similar to like what Astrobot did or like some other Crash Bandicoot even, where like instead of using health or having a health bar, it's just 2 or 3 hits and then you're dead, or instant death or something like that. the health, like
Yeah.
I find myself like, you know, like the abilities that restore your health, all of that stuff feels like it feels very half baked. So, but you know, like I said, like the foundation is there in terms of like some of the core gameplay, some of the abilities. So I could see like in a sequel them really fleshing that stuff out and like really just like branching out the, you know, like the ability tree is like literally just one track for each of the abilities and just like a single track for like her general attacks. So it's, you know, very bare bones, very limited. But yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of charm. It's got a lot of heart. You can tell it was made with love. So I definitely like, you know, there's definitely a lot to nitpick about it, but it's definitely worth playing and enjoying and experiencing. That and one last thing I'll say about it is I'm playing it on an ultra wide monitor, and this thing is beautiful. Like it is just, I mean, like the art style just sings, and I mean, like, yeah, like it's definitely worth playing.
The art style, the more and more I think about it, it reminds me, it's very, the movie studio, Lyco's studio, the ones who did, like, Coraline and,
Yeah.
and other, it definitely gives me that feel, especially with like the horror and the spooky aspects of it.
That's exactly how I pitched it to my wife. Was like, yeah, like imagine if they took The Princess and the Frog, you know, like obviously like the Louisiana bayou setting, and then just injected a whole bunch of Coraline and like Tim Burton into it.
Absolutely.
And like that's 100% what it's going for, and it's great. It's awesome. And like, yeah, someone who's lived in the South all his life, like that is. Like, it's always something I've had an interest in. So I'm glad someone actually, like, you know, took the time and, like, wrote it. And, you know, like, I'm glad it exists.
Last question here before we move on. For our other Southerners in the audience, I need to ask. So is this more like, what kind of Southern is this? Are we talking like the impression I get is like Louisiana Bayou, but is there something else? Is that, or is it, you know, what kind of, where in the South do you feel this is coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I think Louisiana is very much, you know, it's a fictional town of Prospero. At least I think it's fictional. But yeah, it's very clear that it is Louisiana. But like, I mean, you know, I mean, think a lot of, you know, like, I mean, yeah, for those who maybe didn't grow up in the South or don't live in the, you know, community is a big thing here, especially like, I mean, you know, it's very clear like that Hazel like lives like in an impoverished area. So I mean, like, she's very close with her neighbors, checking in on her neighbors. You know, a hurricane happens and it's like a big, you know, central focus of like the, you know, kicking off of the story.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I think, you know, like there's a lot of focus on like community and like not to spoil some of like the like the more traumatic, like when it goes into like some of these characters' backstory, but like there's a lot of stuff that is, you know, like rooted in Southern culture. Just in terms of like the patriarchy and, you know, like, you know, the men's role in the house and women's role in the house and like what it means when men can't provide and, you know, things like that. There's a lot of, you know, tough themes that it tackles, which is another thing that I really enjoy and appreciate about it. And like I said, it makes you empathize with all of the characters that you run into, like, and you know, that's regardless of, you know, like, I mean, they've got guys that look like they're probably hardcore Trumpers and they make you feel for them at some point. And so it's very much like, I think it's rooted in like traditional Southern hospitality and love your neighbor kind of stuff.
Nice. Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like they've got a better game here than you know, than We Happy Few from the sounds of it, and hopefully it finds the audience and you know, they get to either make a sequel or something with as much heart as this seems to have.
Don't do them like you did. What you call it? The oh god, I'm totally blanking now. The music game.
The only music game I can think of right now is Fuser.
Why can't I think of that? That also failed. Oh my god! It's now I'm thinking No Straight Roads, but it's not that game. Oh god, I'm totally blanking now. What was the music game that came out and that everyone loved, and then they shut down the studio?
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yes, Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush. Don't do. See, look, now I just completely lost the plot. But yes, don't do like them like you did with Hi-Fi Rush.
All right, we're gonna move on to our last game of conversation today, which is Blue Prince. That is Blue Prince, as in a royal son. Wesley and I have been playing this game, and so first of all, up front, this is a puzzle roguelike game. Given the heavy emphasis of puzzles in this game, we're not going to be talking about any of the puzzle solutions, so this should be completely spoiler-free, which does make it a bit harder to talk about, but I think this game, it's gotten a lot of buzz, especially in the critics' circles recently.
It got insane reviews.
Insane reviews, a lot of buzz, a lot of like cryptic, tweets or whatever from critics before the embargo ended, where they're like, "Oh, I'm playing my game of the year game right now. Like this is, I haven't been obsessed with a game like this in years." And it turns out that it's Blue Prince that they were talking about here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw an Elden Ring comparison at some point.
Yeah, they're just a truly incredible amount of hype for this among the not just the puzzle fans, but the gaming critic community. Maybe not so much the the general gaming community, but among those who are in the know and writing the reviews. This generated a lot of buzz.
How does it stack up? Like, how are you feeling about it so far?
Yeah, so my thoughts on this, and to put this in context, I have played, as we said, this is basically a roguelike puzzle game. It is run based. I've done 20 runs, which I think is maybe 15 hours or so. I'm very, very conflicted on this. I want to like this game a lot more than I think I do. I cannot get past. I'm not a huge roguelike person, and I think that the roguelike structure that they have put these puzzles into is not the right fit for what they're doing here. I think it's.
Yeah, I feel like roguelite and puzzle isn't inherently a good fit, and like hearing that it was a roguelite coming into it, like kind of dampened my like desire to play it.
Yeah, I mean it's not as bad a fit as you might think. You can kind of tell why they did this. For those who don't know, you're basically. The objective of the game is to find the 46th room of a 45-room house. And every day you walk through the front door and you into the main hall, and from each door you see, you can draft a room, which means that the rooms, the layout of the house and the rooms that are within the house change every day. And you're not necessarily able to fill up all those every day, because each rooms, some rooms have anywhere between 4 to 1 doorway into them, so you can hit dead ends, and you're making decisions on which rooms to draft, partially based on that, because if you have nowhere else to go, then you can't draft any more room, and that effectively ends that run. So I think, Wesley, what are your thoughts here from what you've played so far?
Listen, everybody, I'm on my 12th run of this game, okay? And Matthew, I understand your hesitation, I understand your reserves, but it's my game of the year like contender right now. Like because I don't like puzzle games, telling me about this game beforehand, I'm like, oh, this is like one of those early 2000s, like go on Flash Player and you play some kind of like point and click escape room type thing. That's what I'm thinking in my head. But I finally dive into this thing, and I'm so absorbed in the mystery of the game. The gameplay mechanics are intriguing and challenging, and right off the get-go they're like, hey, you might need to take notes, so like get a pencil, get a piece of paper. And so like I have a notebook, and like I've been jotting down my thoughts and, you know, discovering ciphers, and, or not ciphers, but like figuring out how to solve some various puzzles, so that way by the time I'm back in there on my next run, I'm like, oh, I've already got this. I know what to do. And then, like we said, we're not gonna spoil anything, but just the idea that you can be playing this game with ideas in your head, and all of a sudden you draft a brand new room, and you just find a piece of paper, and all of a sudden everything you've been doing you find out is wrong, and then you're like, oh, now I know what to do in this situation. And like having that sort of revelation for me was just incredible.
Okay, you're bringing me back.
It's a cozy tea game that makes you feel like some sort of paranormal detective. Betrayal. There's that board game Betrayal. Yeah. It has a lot of that aesthetic behind it. I mean, obviously. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned the trap doors and like the rooms, and like, isn't there? I mean, with it being a roguelike, isn't like some of it procedurally generated, right? No, it's all handcrafted, right?
It's all, yeah. The roguelike aspect of it is just you drafting rooms. The rooms themselves don't change, other than like maybe some of the items you find in them. But the form of the room of that, you know, like one is like I'm trying to think of one, like spare hallway or spare bed, spare and room. So like or something. That room's always going to be the same.
That room, like, you know, you've essentially solved it forever. So like, you know what to do when it comes back around.
That's true. And another thing to take into consideration here, there are various items and collectibles that you can pick up during your runs that can change certain aspects of the rooms. So like a room that doesn't do anything except serve as like a point from, you know, point A to point B as you're getting to the 46th room can turn into, oh, hey, you're now more likely to find coins in rooms, or you know, things like that can sort of change the aspect of your run. You could pull up a room that's just like, oh, hey, going forward, you're now going to draw more of this type of room.
Yeah.
Yes, and all that, there's a lot of what you're getting into. There are a lot of run modifiers that are like intra-run modifiers. So once you are in a run, there are lots of different, you know, you could have a, like, I'm trying to think of a comparison here, but like, you know, like when you're playing Hades, you as you're getting god abilities throughout a run, you can say, oh, this is my run where I'm building up into this kind of aspect, like I'm building like an AOE build type thing,
right?
Or something. So there is a small element of that. I think, and again, you're on run 12. I think run 15 or so is where I started turning a corner where I'm having wasted runs a lot more. I think one important thing to mention here is you mentioned like the aha, like the eureka moment of drafting a new room. I can almost promise you that the rooms, like there's over 100 rooms you can draft. I cannot, it's not fully random. And they did say that there are some weighted, like there are more common rooms, but I can promise you there are some rare rooms that they are just simply not going to give you until you have done a certain number of runs, because they are trying to. It feels like they're trying to manufacture it early on so that you don't have wasted runs. Like if they can sense that you are about to hit a wall, they'll drop in a good room for you or something. Like it feels very crafted to not waste that many runs. Which in turn, I think that's a good thing, but that also to me says that you know, the inverse of that is that you are also holding back some things intentionally to draw out the number of runs that the average person is going to take to reach the end. Which once you start to see that layer, that kind of that's frustrating to me, and that's just like something that I don't like about roguelikes in general is the artificiality of the way some of the odds. Like it's one thing, you know, if it's completely random and you get a bad draw or something, that's one thing. But when it feels like they're loading the deck either for you or against you, or like trying to like nudge you at just the right amount to keep you hooked. I appreciate that in some ways, but it also kind of frustrates me, especially after you get past, like I was saying, like run 15 or so, where I had like 3 runs where I got nothing new. I saw no new rooms, I got no new information, solved no new puzzles, and it felt like wasted time. And so it's now at run 20, after 20 runs. It's actively losing me because I know puzzles. Like I have solutions to puzzles, but I'm not getting the RNG is not falling my way in a way that allows me to solve them. And I know there's probably other puzzles out there. Like the people who have played like 100 hours of this game are screaming right now, saying like, "Oh, you're ignoring so much else." And maybe, but I am looking. But it's hard. I'm not saying anything else, right? Like, so it's either it's not nudging me, or it's not giving me enough clues or new rooms to indicate other puzzles that are there. And all I'm left with are the puzzles that I know I can solve, but I can't get to. So I've reached a point of frustration with it. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to end up completing it. Go ahead, Neil.
No, yeah, I was gonna say. I think the way you described it mirrors in a lot of ways my experience with Balatro last year, where like it just came to like the concept is just crack. Like there's absolutely nothing that should be keeping me from playing that game 24/7. But the fact that it's RNG, the fact that like I would make it 2/3 through a run and then just hit a wall, and it was like, oh well, like it that frustration. Like, so yeah, I'm definitely going to kick the tires on it because I think there's enough there for me to at least make it to the 15 run mark, and then I do think where if I do struggle with some of the like the RNG stuff, I will drop off as well, especially if like I think the exception was Hades with like because that gameplay is like I could just play that game forever. So like I was able to trudge through some of those like wasted runs. But yeah, when you're talking about something a little bit more slower paced, a puzzle game, something where like, oh, you have the answer to something, you always have the answer for. It's like, oh god, I got to do this room again. Like I could see that getting old pretty fast.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, the other thing that I think about now as I play this game is like this. It is clearly evoking like Myst and like some of these other classic, even like Fez, which I didn't play, but I read Fez or read about Fez, and I know kind of what it was doing with some things where like. Or even Animal Well last year, where you beat the game, but like there's a lot of like hidden extra secrets in there that you can dive back in and like really try to solve. And it's got elements of that here. I just think that like this is a again you can probably, if you know what you're doing and you go back and like start a new game, you may be able to beat it in just a couple runs or whatever. But this is a game where it's like 40 hours long for most people to see the end of it. And if you remove the run-based aspect, I there is a way that this could have been done where you could just fully manipulate all the rooms at will. Maybe you don't unlock them all at once, but you're not like doing runs with them. And this is like a 15-hour game, or maybe 25 with all the extra stuff. But instead, it feels super long and inflated for what it is because of the garbage run time in here. At least that's how I'm feeling about it at my particular juncture. Wesley, any other thoughts before we wrap this up here?
This is a game that for me doesn't swing by, doesn't fall in my lap very often. I love the idea of puzzles in a lot of especially in like Uncharted, for example. I love solving those types of puzzles. They're quick and simple. This is something that requires time and effort, and I just love the fact that, like, yeah, it's gonna take a while. It is quite frustrating. I do believe that's where the Elden Ring comparison came from that you were talking about, Neil. I believe that by the time I get to the end of this, it's going to be very satisfying in the Souls-like way, which I've never really gotten to experience that before. So
well, that's cool. I hope you experience that.
Yeah. I hope you stick with it.
Everyone listening to this.
Yeah.
I would love everyone listening to this to definitely give it a try. Especially if you have the PlayStation Plus Extra. Like, it's free. Like,
or Game Pass.
It's on Game Pass.
Or Game Pass. That is true. Yeah. Please, if you guys have Game Pass, give it a try. But this one came out of left field for me, so I really enjoyed it. I am enjoying it, and I hope by the end of it I can say, fuck yeah, I enjoyed this. I found a room.
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a heavy contender in the Game of the Year discussions at the end of the year.
Certainly,
and
for maybe Indie of the Year.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And maybe I'll keep plugging away at it. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us today, folks. Thanks for listening to us and killing time with us today. We're gonna drop our socials in the description. Please, give us a follow if you enjoyed what you heard, and we will see you with another episode in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody.
Stay safe. Stay hydrated.